Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the heart of the metropolis, an architectural monolith reigned supreme, its glass facade soaring high above the concrete jungle. This tower, revered as the pinnacle of financial prowess, stood as an indomitable presence, watching over the bustling streets like a silent guardian. Within its luxurious confines, on an exclusive executive level, a man, synonymous with corporate ascendancy, was deeply engrossed in his digital sanctuary. Warren Matthews, age 42, sat in his opulent office suite, an enviable workplace with panoramic views of the urban realm below. His dark suit and immaculately tailored shirt underscored his unwavering dedication to success. With piercing focus, he commanded his electronic domain, unyielding in his pursuit of achieving digital perfection. Each keystroke, a testament to his authoritative precision, echoed in the serene sanctum. Minutes felt like hours as Warren's world fused with the digital interface. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Matthews, but this package just arrived for you. It's marked urgent." Warren's brow furrowed as he eyed the nondescript brown parcel in her hands. "I wasn't expecting anything. Who's it from?" Rachel shook her head. "There's no return address, sir. It was delivered by courier." Curiosity piqued. Warren gestured for her to place it on his desk. "Thank you, Rachel. That'll be all." As the door closed behind her, Warren studied the package. It was roughly the size of a shoebox, wrapped in plain brown paper with his name and office address neatly printed on a white label. No postmark, no stamps, just as Rachel had said. With a mixture of intrigue and caution, he reached for his letter opener and carefully sliced through the tape sealing the package. The paper fell away to reveal a sleek black box underneath. Warren hesitated for a moment before lifting the lid. His eyes widened in surprise as he beheld the contents. Nestled within layers of tissue paper was a stunning red dress. The fabric shimmered under the office lights, its rich crimson hue reminiscent of fine wine. It was elegant, yet daring, with a plunging neckline and a hem that would likely fall just above the knee. Warren's fingers brushed against the silky material, a strange tingle running up his arm at the contact. He quickly withdrew his hand, feeling as though he'd been caught doing something forbidden. His gaze fell on a small envelope tucked into the corner of the box. With slightly trembling fingers, he extracted it and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of high-quality stationery, adorned with flowing script in deep blue ink. "Dear Warren, are you truly satisfied with the life you've built? Or is there a part of you yearning to break free from the constraints of expectation? I challenge you to step outside your comfort zone and experience the world from a different perspective. Spend the next 24 hours as Heidi, the woman you could be. Everything you need is in this box. The choice is yours. Will you dare to discover a side of yourself you've kept hidden for so long? The clock starts when you decide to begin. A friend." Warren read the note 3 times, his heart pounding harder with each pass. He glanced at the dress, then back at the letter, his mind reeling. Who could have sent this? Was it a prank? A test? Or something more? He should have been outraged. He should have tossed the whole package in the trash and forgotten about it. But as he stared at the shimmering red fabric, a long suppressed part of him stirred to life. Memories he'd buried deep resurfaced. Stolen moments as a child, trying on his mother's clothes when the house was empty, the exhilaration and shame warring within him. Warren's hand hovered over the intercom button. He could call security, have them investigate the package's origin. He could pretend this never happened and go back to his spreadsheets and profit margins. but the thought of returning to that life suddenly felt suffocating. Before he could second-guess himself, Warren pressed the button. "Rachel, cancel my appointments for the next 2 days. I'm not feeling well and need to take some personal time." "Of course, Mr. Matthews. Is everything all right?" Rachel's concerned voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes, just a bit under the weather. I'll be working from home. No calls unless it's an absolute emergency." Warren ended the call and sat back in his chair, his heart racing. He couldn't believe what he was considering. But as he looked at the dress once more, a sense of excitement began to overshadow his apprehension. With shaking hands, he reached into the box and lifted the dress. It was even more beautiful up close, the fabric cool and inviting against his skin. Beneath it lay an assortment of items, a long blonde wig, makeup, undergarments, and a pair of red high heels that matched the dress perfectly. Warren glanced at his watch. It was just past 3 p.m. If he was going to do this, he needed to leave now before his resolve crumbled. He quickly packed everything back into the box and slipped it into a larger bag from his closet. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. The drive home was a blur, his mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What if someone recognized him? What if this was all an elaborate setup to ruin him? But underneath the anxiety, a growing sense of anticipation bubbled up. For the first time in years, Warren felt truly alive. As he entered his penthouse apartment, the silence that usually comforted him now felt oppressive. He placed the box on his bed and stared at it, his heart pounding in his ears. This was his last chance to back out, to pretend none of this had ever happened. Instead, Warren found himself walking to the bathroom, the box clutched tightly in his arms. He set it on the counter and began to undress, his movements mechanical as he removed each layer of his carefully constructed identity. As the last piece of clothing fell away, he caught his reflection in the mirror. A middle-aged man with graying temples and a body softened by years behind a desk. Warren took a deep breath and opened the box once more. He started with the basics, fumbling with unfamiliar garments. The silky touch of stockings against his freshly shaved legs sent a shiver through him. Next came the padding to create curves where there were none, followed by the dress itself. As he zipped it up, the fabric hugged his new form in a way that felt both foreign and thrilling. The wig was next, a cascade of golden locks that transformed his appearance instantly. Warren ran his fingers through the soft strands, marveling at how such a simple change could alter his entire look. Makeup proved to be the biggest challenge. He'd never applied so much as chapstick before, and now he was faced with an array of products he barely understood. But as he carefully followed the instructions included in the box, he began to see a new face emerging in the mirror. Smoky eyes, enhanced cheekbones, and full, red lips replaced his usual stern visage. Finally, Warren slipped on the red heels, wobbling slightly as he adjusted to the new height and balance. He turned to face the full-length mirror on the back of the bathroom door, and his breath caught in his throat. Staring back at him was a striking blonde woman in a red dress that hugged every curve. Her blue eyes, framed by long lashes, looked uncertain but intrigued. Heidi, raised a perfectly manicured hand to her cheek, watching in fascination as her reflection did the same. "Hello, Heidi," she whispered, her voice higher and softer than she'd intended. The sound of it sent another thrill through her body. Heidi took a tentative step, then another, slowly growing accustomed to the feel of heels. She made her way back to the bedroom, each movement a new discovery. The swish of the dress against her legs, the gentle bounce of her hair. Every sensation was intoxicating. As she stood in the center of the room, Heidi realized she had no idea what to do next. The note had challenged her to spend 24 hours as a woman, but what did that entail? She couldn't go to work like this, and the thought of venturing outside filled her with equal parts excitement and terror. Her stomach growled, providing a welcome distraction. Food. That was a start. Heidi made her way to the kitchen, her steps becoming more confident with each passing moment. She opened the refrigerator, surveying its sparse contents. The idea of cooking seemed daunting in her current state, so she reached for her phone to order delivery. As her fingers brushed against the screen, she paused. What if the delivery person recognized her voice? Panic rose in her chest before a solution presented itself. She could order online and have them leave the food at the door. Crisis averted. While waiting for her meal, Heidi explored her apartment with new eyes. Everything felt different. The textures beneath her fingertips, the way she moved through spaces. She found herself swaying slightly as she walked, hips moving in a natural rhythm she'd never experienced before. The doorbell chimed, startling her out of her reverie. Heidi froze, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt. She waited until she heard the elevator doors close before cracking open her front door and quickly retrieving the bag of food. As she sat at her dining table, carefully maneuvering to keep her dress pristine, Heidi couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Here she was, a high-powered investment banker, sitting in her apartment dressed as a woman and eating Chinese takeout. The laughter felt good, releasing some of the tension that had built up over the years. When was the last time Warren had truly laughed like this? He couldn't remember. After dinner, Heidi found herself drawn to her home office. She booted up her computer, curious to see how it would feel to work in this new persona. But as she stared at the screen, the endless rows of numbers and projections that usually captivated her attention now seemed cold and lifeless. Instead, she opened a blank document and began to type. Words flowed from her fingers, giving voice to thoughts and feelings she'd suppressed for decades. It was cathartic, liberating in a way she'd never experienced before. Hours passed unnoticed as she poured her heart onto the digital page. A glance at the clock startled her. It was nearly midnight. Heidi stretched, feeling the pull of muscles unused to sitting in such a posture. She saved her work and shut down the computer, suddenly aware of how tired she felt. The process of removing her makeup and changing for bed was another new experience. As she slipped on a silk nightgown she found in the box, Heidi marveled at how natural it felt against her skin. She left the wig on, not quite ready to let go of this new identity. Lying in bed, Heidi's mind raced with the events of the evening. She'd barely scratched the surface of this challenge, yet already she felt changed. What would tomorrow bring? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. As she drifted off to sleep, Heidi's last conscious thought was a realization. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The soft morning light, filtering through the curtains, roused Heidi from her slumber. For a moment, she lay still, convinced it had all been a vivid dream. But as she shifted, feeling the unfamiliar fabric of the nightgown against her skin and the weight of the wig on her head, reality came rushing back. She'd done it. She'd taken the first step into this strange new world, and now she had a full day ahead of her to explore it further. Heidi rose from the bed, her movements still slightly awkward as she adjusted to her transformed body. She padded to the bathroom, catching sight of her reflection in the mirror. Even with smudged makeup and tousled hair, there was something undeniably feminine about her appearance. It both thrilled and unsettled her. After a moment's hesitation, she decided to shower. The process of washing her body felt entirely new, each sensation heightened as she explored unfamiliar curves and textures. As she stepped out and wrapped herself in a fluffy towel, Heidi felt a sense of renewal, as if she were truly being born into this new identity. Drying and styling the wig proved to be a challenge, but she managed to achieve a passable look after consulting some online tutorials. Applying makeup was easier this time, her hands steadier as she recreated the previous day's look with growing confidence. Standing before her closet, Heidi realized she faced a dilemma. The red dress, while stunning, felt too formal for a day at home. She rummaged through the box, relieved to find a more casual outfit, a flowy blouse in soft blue, and a pair of fitted jeans. The jeans hugged her padded curves in a way that made her pause, admiring the silhouette in the mirror. As she made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, Heidi found herself moving with increasing grace. The unfamiliar sway of her hips was becoming more natural, less conscious. She hummed softly as she brewed coffee and toasted a bagel, feeling a sense of domestic contentment she'd rarely experienced as Warren. Sipping her coffee, Heidi contemplated the day ahead. The thought of venturing outside still filled her with trepidation, but she knew she couldn't spend the entire 24 hours cooped up in her apartment. This challenge was about experiencing life as a woman, not just playing dress-up in private. Taking a deep breath, she made a decision. She would go out, just for a little while, to a nearby park where she could walk and observe without drawing too much attention. The idea sent a thrill of excitement through her body. Heidi spent the next hour psyching herself up for the outing. She practiced walking in her heels, perfected her feminine posture, and even worked on softening her voice. Finally, she could delay no longer. Grabbing a small purse she found in the box, she took one last look in the mirror, straightened her blouse, and headed for the door. The elevator ride down to the lobby was nerve-wracking. Heidi's heart pounded as she silently prayed not to encounter any of her neighbors. Luck was on her side, and she stepped out into the bright morning sun without incident. The first few steps on the sidewalk were terrifying. Heidi felt certain that everyone was staring at her, that they could see right through her disguise. But as she continued walking, she realized that most people barely gave her a second glance. She was just another woman on a busy city street. Emboldened by her anonymity, Heidi's stride became more confident. She found herself enjoying the way the breeze played with her hair, the click of her heels on the pavement, the way her blouse fluttered around her body. For the first time, she allowed herself to really look at the world around her. Not as a man assessing potential business opportunities, but as a woman simply experiencing life. The park was bustling with activity, joggers, dog walkers, families enjoying the pleasant weather. Heidi found a bench near a small pond and sat down, crossing her legs in a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. She watched the people around her, fascinated by the different dynamics she observed. A group of women power walking lapped the pond, their animated conversation drifting over to where Heidi sat. She found herself leaning in, drawn to their easy camaraderie. As Warren, He had always viewed such interactions with a mixture of confusion and dismissal. Now, she felt a longing to be part of that world. Lost in thought, Heidi didn't notice the man approaching until he was standing right in front of her. He was tall, with kind brown eyes and a warm smile.
"Excuse me,"
he said, his voice gentle.
"I couldn't help but notice you sitting here alone. I hope I'm not being too forward, but would you like some company?"
Heidi's heart raced. This was something she hadn't prepared for. She opened her mouth to decline, but found herself saying, "That would be lovely," in a soft, feminine voice that surprised even her. The man, who introduced himself as Michael, sat down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. They began to chat, and Heidi found herself slipping into the role with surprising ease. She crafted a simple backstory. She was new to the city, working in finance, not entirely a lie, and enjoying a rare day off. As they talked, Heidi experienced a range of new emotions. There was a flutter in her stomach when Michael laughed at one of her jokes, a warmth that spread through her body when he complimented her blouse. She found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation, seeing Michael not as a potential business contact or competitor, but simply as an interesting person. After about an hour, Michael glanced at his watch and sighed. "I hate to cut this short, but I have a meeting I can't miss. Would you like to get coffee sometime? If you're interested, I mean." Heidi felt a pang of regret, knowing she couldn't pursue this connection. "I'm flattered," she said, surprised by the genuine disappointment in her voice. "But I'm not really in a place to start anything right now. Thank you for the lovely conversation, though." Michael nodded, his smile tinged with disappointment, but understanding.
"Of course. It was a pleasure meeting you, Heidi. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day off."
As he walked away, Heidi was struck by a realization. For the first time in her life, she had experienced what it felt like to be seen and appreciated as a woman. It was a heady, complex feeling. Flattering and empowering, yet also somewhat uncomfortable given the deception involved. Lost in thought, Heidi made her way back to her apartment. The brief outing had given her a lot to process. As she rode the elevator up to her penthouse, she found herself wondering, was this just a fleeting experiment, or had she unlocked something deeper within herself? Back in the safety of her home, Heidi kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The thrill of her successful outing warred with guilt over the deception. The joy of feeling truly seen battled against the fear of what this might mean for her carefully constructed life. She glanced at the clock. It was only mid-afternoon. There were still many hours left in this 24-hour challenge, but already Heidi felt as though she'd lived a lifetime of new experiences. What more could she discover about herself in the time that remained? As she pondered her next move, Heidi's phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Rachel, her assistant. "Mr. Matthews, I hope you're feeling better. There's been a development with the Hartley account that requires your immediate attention. Can you join a video call in an hour?" Panic gripped Heidi. She couldn't possibly. Or could she? A daring idea began to form in her mind. With trembling fingers, she typed out a reply. "I'm still not feeling 100%, but I can manage a brief call. Audio only, please." Setting down the phone, Heidi rushed to her home office. She had an hour to prepare for the biggest performance of her life. She touched up her makeup, ensuring she looked flawless even though no one would see her. Then she began to practice, pitching her voice higher, softening her tone, trying to find a balance between femininity and authority. As the appointed time approached, Heidi settled into her desk chair, heart pounding. She connected to the call, camera off, and took a deep breath.
"Good afternoon, everyone,"
she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What's the situation with Hartley?" For the next 30 minutes, Heidi navigated the call with a mixture of her usual business acumen and a new, more intuitive approach. She found herself listening more, asking questions she might not have considered before. The feminine lilt to her voice seemed to put others at ease, encouraging more open discussion. By the time the call ended, Heidi felt exhilarated. She had done it. She had successfully conducted business as a woman, and in some ways, she felt she had performed even better than usual. This realization both thrilled and unsettled her. As the afternoon wore on, Heidi found herself reflecting on the various experiences of the past 24 hours. She had explored so many facets of femininity, the physical transformation, the social interactions, even the professional realm. Yet there was one area she hadn't touched, the emotional landscape. On an impulse, Heidi decided to call her mother. As Warren, their relationship had always been somewhat strained, marked by unmet expectations and emotional distance. But now, speaking in her softer, feminine voice, Heidi found herself opening up in ways she never had before. "Mom?" she said, fighting back tears. "I just wanted to tell you I love you, and I'm sorry if I haven't always been the best at showing it." The conversation that followed was unlike any they'd ever had. Heidi spoke of fears and hopes she'd never dared voice as Warren. Her mother, taken aback at first by the emotional outpouring, soon reciprocated, sharing her own vulnerabilities and regrets. By the time they hung up, both were crying, but there was a sense of healing, of bridges mended. Heidi sat in stunned silence, marveling at the depth of emotion she'd accessed. Was this what it meant to embrace her feminine side? This raw, open-hearted connection? As evening fell, Heidi found herself growing melancholy. The 24 hours were nearly up, and soon she would have to make a decision. Return to life as Warren, or what? She wasn't even sure what the alternative might be. She poured herself a glass of wine and settled onto her balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life. The weight of the choice before her felt immense. Going back to her old life seemed impossible now that she'd experienced this other side of herself. But fully embracing life as Heidi was terrifying in its own way. As she sipped her wine, Heidi's gaze fell on a notepad she'd left on the table. On an impulse, she began to write, pouring out her thoughts and feelings about the past 24 hours. As she wrote, a clarity began to emerge. She realized that the question wasn't simply Warren or Heidi, but rather, how could she integrate these two parts of herself? The strength and drive that had made Warren successful could be balanced by Heidi's empathy and intuition. The emotional openness she'd discovered as Heidi could enrich Warren's relationships. As the final minutes of the 24-hour challenge ticked away, Heidi made her decision. She wouldn't choose one identity over the other. Instead, she would find a way to honor both aspects of herself, to live authentically in a way she never had before. The path ahead would be challenging. There would be difficult conversations, potential backlash, and a lot of self-discovery. But for the first time in years, Heidi felt truly excited about the future. She raised her glass to the twinkling city below. "Here's to new beginnings," she said softly, her voice a perfect blend of Warren's depth and Heidi's warmth. "And to finally becoming whole." As the clock struck midnight, marking the end of the 24-hour challenge, Heidi felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The journey of self-discovery she had embarked upon was far from over, but she had taken the crucial first steps. Whatever came next, she would face it with a newfound strength and understanding of herself. She stood, smoothing down her blouse, and made her way back inside. There was much to do, plans to make, people to talk to, a life to reshape. But for now, Heidi allowed herself to simply be. She curled up on the couch, wrapping herself in a soft blanket, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and revelations. For tonight, she would rest, secure in the knowledge that she had finally found the courage to be true to herself. As she drifted off to sleep, a small smile played on her lips. The red dress that had started it all hung in her closet, a reminder of the transformative power of taking a chance on oneself. In the quiet of the night, as the city hummed below, a new chapter was beginning. Warren and Heidi, two sides of the same coin, would learn to coexist and thrive. And in that delicate balance, a fuller, richer life awaited, one filled with authenticity, empathy, and the freedom to be wholly oneself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!